Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today on Oklahoma Gardening, host Casey Hentges looks at different seed starting kits for growing transplants. And we have information from last season to get your vegetable garden off to a great start, including a cold frame from hay bales, tips for growing onions, and 5 easy vegetables for beginning gardeners.
Looking for a convenient option, and this time of year we often find those seed starting kits starting to show up in our garden centers. Now you might look at them and think, well, that's got everything I need to start my seeds, but does it? And also they come in such an array of price ranges with different options and that sort of stuff. We thought we would take advantage of that and kind of compare some of those seed starting kits that are available to you. Now, the one that you often see showing up at a lot of garden centers and box stores is just this simple, basic plastic tray here. It's got a thin plastic cover over it, and it comes with 72 of these peat pots. You can see they're dried and they're pressed, and so what we need to do is put those in water and allow them to expand a little bit, and you can see how much they expand into, and this gives us a nice little planting surface. What you do is just put your seed straight in there. We add a little moisture to the bottom of it and then cover it. Now it also claims that it comes with some plant labels, but I must say it only came with about 6 plant labels, 1 for each row. Now this seed starting kit costs $8, so it's fairly cheap, and it'll grow about 72 plants for us. But again, you can see how thin this plastic is, and so you might only really get about 1 season out of this. The other thing is a lot of our seed starting kits are going to come with a plastic lid, and that's to retain that humidity where our seeds are trying to grow. Now this kit has a very shallow profile to it, and so what that means is as soon as our seeds start germinating, once they get any height to them, we're going to need to take this off, so allowing those seedlings to grow. Now the problem with that is as soon as you remove that, you've exposed it to any drafts that you might have, and these seedlings are very susceptible to drying out quickly. So while it's a good option, it's going to require a little bit more maintenance, and you might see a little bit slower results in this one. The other thing is you also want to make sure that you provide it with some additional light. We've just exposed these to natural sunlight because it didn't come with any. So our second kit here costs about $25. Now this one we ordered online, so you might not find it in garden centers, but you might in some of the nicer garden centers. And this one you can see again, it comes with a plastic lid that has ventilation in it. Now the nice thing about this is as these seedlings get taller, and it allows for them to get taller in there, you can open these vents up, allowing for more airflow so that they can transition out of that humid environment but not dry out so quickly. You can see here that these didn't come with peat pots. What they came with are what's called these biocells. This is a styrofoam insert that's just kind of floating in a few inches of water, and then you put these inserts in there. They've got pre-drilled holes that you can put your seedlings in, and you can see we've had fairly good results with it. Now this came with good directions. It did not come with any labels, but it also came with a little bit of fertilizer. So this is a nice kit that you could probably get a couple of seasons out of. The other thing about this though is you will need to buy replacement biocells to fill your styrofoam. Now down here on the end we have our Cadillac seed starting kit, and this one came at a premium of $150, but it's one that's going to last you a little bit longer than just one season. You could definitely get more seasons out of this. Again, we've got a good hard plastic container and tray to grow these in. that also again has vents to it so that we can open it up and slowly transition those seedlings. It came with these peat pot trays that again you have to pre-soak those and then plant your seeds in. It also came with a packet of labels and some fertilizers and some nice directions. Now what really sets this kit apart from the other two is this LED light that hangs above these seedlings, which is so important for new seedlings to get started. Also, it comes with this heating pad that you set your seedlings on. It's got a little information on here, including a few of your basic crops and how many days to expect for them to germinate. So, and what temperature to set that at. So we've got a really nice setup here. What I probably like best about this is it's so self-contained. You don't have to worry about finding any sort of grow light. With the other two kits, you need to think about what sunny window you're going to put them next to, or if you have a grow light. And if you do put them in a sunny window, you're going to have to rotate these kits around so that the seedlings don't start stretching towards that light. Now let's look at the plants themselves that we have growing in here and kind of compare how they're doing. So again, if we start back at our first cheaper $8 kit, we've got a few seedlings that are starting to come up. Now on this one, it didn't really come with any directions saying to pull the little netting apart, and so we just put our seeds directly in there. And you can see how some of those seedlings are having a little difficulty in getting out of those peat pots. But it's doing well. They are germinating. Just a little more higher maintenance. You want to check these more frequently, and it might take a little bit longer. Now moving down to our second seed kit, if you look at these, they've all germinated pretty uniformly. We've got several seedlings coming up. They just now are starting to get their true set of leaves. Now if you come down here to our premium kit, you might start thinking that they're not looking quite as good because they're pretty short. But in fact, if you look at the leaves, that's the important thing to show the progression and the age of the seedlings. We've got several sets of true leaves coming on. So those leaves that are already starting to look like tomatoes have developed. So because we've provided this overhead light, these seedlings haven't had to stretch for any light like these other ones. You can see how much taller these are. And stretching can be a real problem with seedlings, especially as they get a little bit bigger, because they tend to maybe want to break when you're handling or transplanting them. And also when you put them out into the wind, it creates more liability that they might break. Whereas these are short, they're a little bit more stocky and stout. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the roots that are developing. You can see here that they both have fairly good roots on them. So we've got some good plants coming along here, and these are definitely warmer from the heating pad, which has helped create more uniform germination. So all in all, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the container that allows your plants to grow, but the light and the heating pad of this unit is really important and has really benefited our seedlings.
It seems like the moment after the holidays are over and that first seed catalog arrives in your mailbox, we all get a little antsy to get out into the garden. And we are excited to be back with fresh new shows, and we're going to start off our show today by doing a project combined with planting some seeds out in the garden. Now, right now, this time of year, we have some really nice days followed by some really cold days. And so we're going to build a straw bale cold frame to help moderate those temperatures. You can see what our straw bale cold frame is going to look like. We've got to do a little bit of work here, so we're going to go ahead and tear this apart and prep our soil before we finish our cold frame. So we've got our bed prepped and we're ready to start planting our seeds. In this cold frame, we're going to plant some carrot seeds and some sugar snap peas. We want to put our peas on the north side because they're going to get a little bit taller than our carrots. The carrots that we have that we're going to plant are called a cosmic purple. We're going to plant those on about a 4-inch spacing. So we're going to kind of make a line here. We're going to do 2 rows down the middle of our irrigation and then 1 row on the outside of our irrigation. So carrot seeds are really quite small. So what we'll do is just kind of sprinkle those down the rows. Now before we do that, it's important to have good moisture around your seed. So what I like to do is get a little potting soil and kind of sprinkle that down our rows here. We don't need a lot, but what this will do is just give us a little bit more moisture retention around our seeds. Now we wanted to use a little more potting soil just to cover those seeds. And traditionally what we think of as a rule for planting depth is 2.5 times the diameter of the seed. So considering how small carrot seeds are, we really are not going to cover them over that much at all. So this again will just help keep some of that moisture around those seeds once we water them in. And then we just kind of want to smooth them out as well, making sure that we have good seed to soil contact so that we don't have too much air exposure on those young seedlings as they germinate. You might have noticed our little bit of tinfoil on our drip irrigation, and this is just kind of a thing that we have figured out. Around our joints, these hard pieces of plastic, we have found that they tend to leak. And it looks like we've got some sort of rodent, whether it's a mouse or a squirrel, that likes to come in here and kind of chew on just these hard joint pieces. So we've done a lot of different things and we've actually found that tinfoil works the best. So that's why we've got some tinfoil wrapped around some of our drip irrigation. Down at this end, we're going to plant some sugar and snap peas, and we're going to put those on about the same spacing. Now, these peas are more of a bushy pea, so they're only going to get a couple of feet tall. And they don't really need trellising like some of your taller snap peas that we're going to plant in our keyhole a little bit later. These you can trellis if you want to. We don't plan on trellising ours. Really, the value of trellising these is just to help with harvesting a little bit better. But they are fine growing on their own. You can see that pea seeds, obviously, are a little bit larger. So we're going to plant these individually down our line here. We always want to make sure that we label our seeds. So we've got sugar and peas. And then also put the date of when we planted these so that we can kind of see when we're out there whether they should be coming up or not. So we've got our peas on the north side here, and we've got our carrots on the south side. Now, one of the other things I wanted to let you know is the reason why we planted our carrots in our traditional vegetable bed is because the soil has really been cultivated, and it's a nice loamy soil. Carrots are a taproot, and so of course they want to grow straight down. If you have clay soils or rocky soils, you might find that your carrots tend to fork a little bit or split. And in that case, you would want to use a raised bed or even a container garden to grow your carrots. If you just really want to grow your carrots in your rocky soil, look for a carrot cultivar that's a little bit shorter. Of course, it'll be shorter so it won't be growing too much into that soil. Now we just need to water these seeds. So now that we have our bed prepped, all we're going to do is roll our straw bales back into place and then put our window frames over our bed. So basically what we've constructed here is an insulated greenhouse, giving our temperatures a little more consistency for our plants. Now, as the temperatures start warming up and we start having more warm days than we do cooler days, we're going to need to vent these. This is why we used windows. You could use doors, but what I liked about windows in particular, if you put the inside of the window facing up, when we have those hot days, you can just open the window. If you have a door or a shower door that you want to use, you're going to have to prop that up somehow. And with our Oklahoma winds, that can be a little risky if it gets caught by the wind and blows off. We're going to put some wooden stakes just to kind of secure this in place. Now, because we've planted peas and carrots, the screen actually will serve as a nice way to keep those insects out. But peas and carrots don't need pollinators. They don't need insects to pollinate them. Peas are self-pollinating, and of course carrots or after the root, so it doesn't matter. If you were to plant something in here that needed insect pollinators to get that fruit, then of course you would want to take those screens off. As our peas continue to grow, they might grow a little bit too close to these, but by that time our temperatures will be warm and we'll go ahead and remove these frames. These frames we got for about $10 at our local rehab store, and it's a cheap and easy way to go ahead and get those seeds started in the garden a little bit sooner.
I'm Jim Shrefler. I'm the Area Extension Horticulture Specialist for Southeast Oklahoma with the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service. We're here at the Wes Watkins Agriculture Research and Extension Center today. Well, what we have here actually at this to look at today is a variety trial that includes a number of different varieties of red onions. Now these are some onion varieties that just became available recently on the market. They were newly developed by several different companies and one by New Mexico State University. Why are we doing a trial with red onions? Well, when it comes with yellow onions, which are probably the most popular type, we have several good varieties available now. We have a short day one, which means that they mature earliest, and that would be Texas 1015Y or Texas Super Sweet, different names for the same onion. And we also have one called Candy, which is very popular, and it matures a little bit later. It's called an intermediate day-length onion. Now our red onions here, these are all supposed to be intermediate day-length onions, the ones we have in the trial here. And what we're finding now, is that some of them tend to be a little bit earlier than others because we'll look at them here in a moment. But as an onion plant matures, it develops its bulb, and when it gets to the point where that bulb is fully matured, the tops will all of a sudden on their own they'll fall over. Okay, that's not, you don't have to break them over anything. They just on themselves, by themselves, the neck of the onion becomes weakened and it falls over. So sometimes growers call us and ask us, and they say, well, my onions look real nice, but all of a sudden they made a big, long, tall stalk. It made some nice, pretty flowers on the head, but they're not growing an onion bulb. So what did I do something wrong? That we call that bolting, and it's actually the onion going from just a vegetative growth phase to a reproductive phase and producing flowers, and those flowers will, if we leave them there, they'll produce seeds. Now the thing that causes that is when that onion plant was small, you know, maybe about the diameter of your small finger there, when the onion plant was that small, if it was exposed to temperatures in the mid-40s or so for a prolonged period, that's what triggers the physiology of the onion plant to eventually make that seed stalk. But if they don't expose, in most of these you see don't have the seed stalk, they're not going to get it. They're just going to mature and the tops will fall over. But this does occasionally happen, and a lot of times gardeners will buy onion transplants and plant them, and they get a lot of these. So one thing I can say, when you buy your transplants, get them as early as possible in February, and also avoid the ones that have lots of big onions you get a pack of about 60. Avoid the ones that have the big fat ones. Stick with the ones that are diameter of your finger or smaller, and you'll have less incidence of that problem.
Have you eaten your vegetables? Some people love them, and well, others might have already changed the channel. But we all know that vegetables are nutritious and that we should eat them. In case you haven't developed a taste for them, or maybe you're trying to convince your kids to like them, you might want to try growing them yourselves. Research has suggested that if you grow a vegetable yourself, then kids are at least more likely to try them. Here are 5 easy vegetables to grow for the first-time gardener.
Number 1.
Carrots are probably children's most favorite vegetable, and they're pretty easy to grow. They're a small seed, and so what you're going to do is just scatter that seed along some loose potting soil. You can do this either in a container or in the garden itself. You just want loose soil, and we're just going to scatter these throughout the soil here. You can also get long, skinny carrots known as sugar snack and candy snack. And there's even colorful carrots like Purple Sun and Snowman, which is a white carrot. With names and colors like this, it's sure to pique your child's interest.
Number 2.
Radishes are another easy vegetable to grow, and actually one of the fastest to germinate and be able to harvest. With radishes, you're going to sow those just like you did the carrots, and just kind of scatter them throughout the soil area. Again, you can do these in a container if you want to make it easy for harvesting. When the radish seeds start to germinate and you are able to see the plant come up, we're going to do what we do with carrots, and that's called thinning them. So we'll come in a little bit later and pull out a few of those radishes that are close together, and that will allow those other remaining radishes to grow nice and big.
Number 3.
We often think of lettuce as being green, but it seems like green can be a warning flag to kids. There's actually a lot of different varieties of lettuce, and many of them come in different colors, including some red and green mixes. We have one here that we're going to plant called strawberry cabbage lettuce. But all lettuce is pretty easy to grow, and you're going to treat it the same way as the carrots and the radishes, just by sprinkling the seed across the soil surface. Another thing you can do with lettuce is do succession planting. So every couple of weeks, plant a few more rows of lettuce, and that will prolong the harvest even more.
Number 4.
Now, I know onions can have a strong flavor for kids, but if you pair it with a hot dog or a hamburger, you might be able to convince them to try it. And just for a few dollars, you can get a bundle of onions just like this. And they're really super easy to plant. You're just gonna poke a hole with your finger and bury them up to their necks. And you wanna do this about 4 inches apart. And it'll be magical for your kids to see how such a small thing can turn into a big onion.
Number 5.
What kid doesn't love potatoes? And while they might take up a little bit more room, they are well worth it. Here's a fun and easy way to grow potatoes. Get a large container. You can use an old plastic pot that you might have, or here we've got a bucket, and we've cut the bottom of it off. Now, if it's tapered, you want to put the taper towards the top. So we're going to flip this bucket over. And what we're going to do is fill this with about 1/3 of soil. Potting soil works just fine. It's easy to get and will be a nice media for those potatoes to grow in and easy for harvesting. Once you have it about 1/3 of the way full of potting soil, then we're going to put our seed potatoes in there. And if you get seed potatoes that are fairly small, you don't need to cut them or cure them. So we're going to put these in just whole as it is. You can already see they're starting to sprout. And for this size, I like to do about 3 potatoes per container. And we're going to space those about in here so they have plenty of room to grow. And now what we're going to do is, again, fill with another 1/3 of soil. So when we have those potatoes nice and covered, at this point we're pretty much done. We're going to water this in, but then we'll start to see our potatoes sprout and they'll continue to grow. As they continue to grow, we're going to do what's called hilling them in, and that's when we come back and put more soil over those plants. You want to be careful not to break the stems when you do this, but we're going to continue to bury them up and just leave the tips sticking out. Eventually this container will be full of potato plants, and when you start to see those potato plants decline a little bit, that's when you know that the potatoes are ready to harvest. And this is when it's exciting for the kids. They can come in, you can pull this container off, and you can have a treasure hunt for those potatoes inside. For an added bonus, you could get purple potatoes to make it even more of a treasure hunt. All of these crops are what is known as a cool season crop, which means that it's ideal to plant them February through March before the temperatures get too warm. They do like full sun and they will enjoy those spring showers. However, as a first-time gardener, you don't need to worry too much about insects and diseases. The biggest challenge will be knowing when to water. While those spring showers will be helpful, do not just rely on them. The best way to know when to water your plants is by sticking your finger in the soil. If it's wet a couple inches below the soil line, then you're probably good for another day. If it's dry, then that means it's time to water.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week, we are going to up-pot our transplants. OSU turfgrass specialist Justin Moss will have turf tips for March. Casey will have tips for selecting bedding plants, and we'll look at some great perennials for your landscape. We hope you join us then for more TV you'll grow to love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.